Hey everyone!
Welcome to Happiness Hunt.
Wait a second, we're not doing that.
Yeah, we are. I changed my mind. Ha ha ha! Today we want to talk about freedom. This word keeps rolling around in my brain and I keep mulling over what is freedom exactly? Are we experiencing it? You know, we always hear that our country, America, was built on freedom. The reason why people risked their lives to come here was for the sake of freedom. Freedom in every realm, you know, certainly religious freedom, but in many other ways too. There was just tyrannical leadership in most other civilizations, most other political environments around the globe, and people wanted something new and different. They wanted more freedom. And today, I'm just thinking, I feel like we're losing it. I feel like we're losing some of our freedom, and we really need to understand what freedom is and preserve it. So, you want to give us a definition of freedom?
Nice. Well, there's lots of different kinds of freedom.
Okay, yeah.
So do you want me to start
Let's just
at the very beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the first thing to say is that people, human beings, are capable of making choices and determining themselves towards whatever goals they have. That's the basic idea of freedom.
Yeah.
And so then on that, you sort of have to decide, well, what kinds of liberties are going to be permitted in a society? Yeah, so like in America, we decided that it was really good to enjoy freedom of speech and freedom of economic action and freedom to determine and decide who governs us.
Right.
All sorts of other types of freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom of education.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of conscience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, why don't you talk a little bit about, like, what you mean by you feel like all these things are being taken away right now?
Well, I just feel like there are political ideas that are surfacing. Actually, they've been surfacing for a while, but the temperature just seems to be getting hotter and hotter around controlling everything, you know, from healthcare to education to social programs. And honestly, I feel like it undermines the dignity of the human person. We are all so different. And we're also very creative, and I feel like some of the attacks on freedom that we're experiencing could really harm us and could really cause us to be a depressed society. Because as human beings, we need to exercise our creativity, and there needs to be ideas surfacing around, and then different people just thrive in different circumstances, like even in the world of education, I'm thinking. We've done all kinds of education in our home. We've experienced a lot of different things, from charter schools to homeschooling to Catholic schools. And, you know, they're all different, and every child is different. And those variances we hold dear. And so I'm just thinking we need more of that. We need opportunities in healthcare, same thing. We need to be able to really focus on looking at root cause of disease. And our medical environment is so good in critical care, you know, when it comes to broken limbs and accidents and heart attacks. And, you know, we're so good at bringing people back from really bad situations, but we're not very good at preserving health. And we're not very good at getting to the root causes of health. So we need all of this. So we can't just focus on one area and then, you know, sort of be negligent about the other areas and about building health. So I see freedoms being taken away. I don't like healthcare that's universal for everybody, you know, because I think we negate these areas. That's what I'm thinking.
So you don't think everybody should have healthcare?
No, that's not. That's not what I'm saying. Did I say that? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
You think people should be able to decide what kind of healthcare they want and then have access to the healthcare they want instead of being fit into one system.
Right, exactly. Like, I don't want to just be fed chemicals and think that that's healthcare. Chemicals, in terms of pharmaceuticals, are oftentimes necessary in critical care situations. But how about supplements? How about recognizing food?
Alternative forms of medicine.
Right, and like there's room at this table for everybody. Right. So let's make room at the table. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, so why do you, I mean, what's the cause of all these freedoms being taken away? Why do you think people are doing this?
Well, it seems to me like there are just some people who think they have the right idea, you know. So there's an element, I don't know, I kind of want to say pride, really. There's an element of where some people think they've got the right thing, they've got the nail on the head, and it's just that one thing that's going to do it. And I just think that's very narrow-minded, very narrow-minded. And I don't think it works. I don't think it's going to benefit all of humanity. It's going to handle one little thing, but it's not going to handle everything.
It's not a one-size-fits-all.
It's not a one-size-fits-all. I'm
you're-
slapping my leg. That's what that sound was about. We've said that in other videos. We can't do that to ourselves. I just go back to, too, just the creativity part. Human beings are awesome, and we come up with some pretty awesome stuff. And why not have an environment in which all of that can come forward and we can feel free around that? That seems
So
really
it seems
important.
like you're saying that some people just want to decide for everyone else the way it should be.
Exactly.
Right. Instead of
And
giving people the choice.
Exactly.
To determine themselves towards what they think is the good.
And even along with that, there's a financial system that gets set up around that one thing. And then it's like, how are you going to get out of that? You got some people making some big bucks, and all the money's going in one direction. Well, how about spreading it out? They talk, groups of people talk about, making it equal for everyone. Well, it really doesn't. I think what we need to do is share the pot. Liberally speaking, we need to share the pot in terms of, I'm just thinking healthcare again, because I tend to go there a lot. I know. But education too,
Yeah. But what do you do about a situation where there's people who, despite all the talk about freedom, are not allowed to participate in a free society because there's injustices or prejudice towards certain people? Because that's kind of what's going on right now. Like people want to solve the problem of injustice by trying to control everything, which I think
Yeah.
history will tell us that never works.
Right.
But when you open up and you have a really free society, what do you do to try to help make sure people aren't left out of that system or aren't, treated poorly within that system?
Well, do we need regulatory bodies to help us do that? Or are you suggesting that comes from within?
Well,
That-
probably a little of both, really. I mean, I think that we need to have, you really can't, this is kind of cliche, but if you're going to have a free society, you have to have virtuous people that
Yeah.
inhabit that society, because what we're seeing today in the streets with all the violence is an exercise of freedom that's highly destructive.
And
right?
is that really
and
freedom?
is that really gonna make things better? Well, history would say no, it's going to make it worse.
No.
So and it's going to further polarize us. So the thing is people have to be virtuous. They have to exercise their freedom responsibly. Because what happens when people exercise their freedom irresponsibly is it creates the conditions for other people to come in and say, well, see, that's why we can't have a free society. We have to control everything and litigate everything and regulate everything and make everything controlled from the top down, right? And then, of course, there's people who think that they're fit and they're more worthy to oversee the life of everybody.
Right.
And, of course, that we should always be very leery of people who think that, because most likely...
Because we're all fallen, that's
Yeah,
one thing.
right.
Like, nobody's going to get it all right.
And we're all susceptible to being corrupted by, having a lot of control and power over people. So, we can be very ideological and say, oh, well, if I was in that position and I had all the power and people would just listen to me,
Yeah.
like I would do it right. Like I wouldn't do
Yeah.
any of those things because, well, I'm just superior to other people and everybody else is just not quite smart enough to govern themselves. But that's the problem. That's the perfect recipe for tyranny. Once we win freedom, and it's a hard-fought fight to win a free society, we have to maintain it.
Yeah.
And we maintain it by exercising our freedom responsibly. We have to really seek the common good. We have to be respectful of one another. And
Because we're not really free to not do that.
No, because
We're really
we
not.
become enslaved as soon as we start being irresponsible and reckless with our freedom. So this is why in the Bible it's kind of interesting, because there's kind of two kinds of freedom that are talked about. There's there's the freedom to do the good that that has been won for us by Christ, right? And then there's the freedom where we spend it and recklessly on the wrong things and then become slaves of those things. Not only of those things, but we become slaves to our taskmasters who ultimately enslave us because we create so much havoc and chaos exercising our freedoms irresponsibly.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really interesting. I just have to say this because it's been on my mind to say, but, you kind of have a generation of people in power right now
Yeah.
You know, they're called the boomers, right? And, you know, they started out their great influence and impact on the world with the summer of love. And it's interesting to
Look
see
where
if
that
they're
got
going
us.
to kind of bring it to a radical conclusion through the summer of hate. 2020. Well, 2020 go down as the summer of hate, the summer of rage, the summer of, you know, uncontrolled tempers, where, you know, kicking and screaming and pounding our fists becomes the rule of law in our country. And you know, I would say both summers were wrong because they didn't understand freedom. They didn't
Yeah.
understand true love, and they didn't understand what's really truly righteous anger.
Right.
Righteous anger is never going to compromise the integrity or compromise the good of justice for the sake of a just end. Because if you do injustice for the sake of a just end, you're going to end up with an unjust outcome. It's never going to turn out well.
Well, let me ask you this. So I'm sitting here as you're talking, and I'm thinking, you know, one thing to consider is that, you know, if we have more freedom and there's more free in every category, you know, I think we will have the opportunity to see what's really working well, like in terms of education. You know, I know we lived in Grand Rapids, and they had charter schools in Michigan, and you know, you got to really discern what's really working for kids. And where is the virtue? You know, as Christians, we care an awful lot about virtue, and we're looking for it. We're trying to see it, and that's what we're going to participate in. And so I think by the exercise of freedom in all these, you know, healthcare, all these other places where we see virtue, where we see people being treated well and people thriving, that's where we're going to go. And it seems to me like those areas would then flourish more. You know, because there would be more support, more financial support. And it seems like we could grow a much better society that way. Am I naive in thinking this, or?
Well, I mean, I think you're right in principle. I think the challenge in real life, though, and this is where we have to be vigilant, is that if you create the conditions for people to make their own choices, not everybody is in the position, actually, to make the best choice for themselves. And so so we want to assume that if everybody has equal opportunity by the law, everybody has equal opportunity by circumstance.
Right.
And they don't. And so as a society that opens up freedom, we have to be especially vigilant
We have to
about
search those people
including
out, right?
the people that are on the margins or
Right.
people that are at a social disadvantage because they
Yeah.
don't have perhaps the education or the economic or the moral, you know, wherewithal
Right.
to actually participate in that free society to the same degree
Right.
as people who have those things.
And those, and when,
So that's why you get the backlash, is because
Yeah.
because what ends up happening is the people who can exercise their freedom to the greatest extent also happen to often be, not always, but often, the people with the greatest access and means to those opportunities.
Right.
So we
and
have
it could be generational, right?
right, and we
Some
have
of
to
this-
so we have to avoid the two extremes, which is, you know, there's a kind of an Americanist attitude. It says, you know, freedom is on the books, and therefore, if you don't make it in the society, it's your fault. And on the other extreme is that, well, you know, people at a social disadvantage are always victims and are always helpless, right? And that's not true either, because you can think of people that have broken free of their social
Yeah.
circumstances, the
Lots of
constraints.
those are the most beautiful stories.
Right,
Yeah.
and they've made it. But most people that are at a social disadvantage, you know,
Have a very hard time.
have a hard time. So that's why if you want to advocate for a free society and the exercise of freedom, we also have to be very vigilant about making sure that we identify those people who might need an extra hand, who need companionship, accompaniment, support. And so we have to make sure that, you know, those kinds of, whatever resources we're talking about, they could be just human, social, economic, political, any kind, you know, there's different kinds of resources are available to people. And that's tricky. It's not...
But it seems like our environment right now is so negative, it's hard to even, like, see those needs.
Well, I mean, like, for example, like, you know, everybody can condemn those who are looting and those who are vandalizing, but those are the people that, from a social and sort of like, when you, like a social and self-determination point of view, have the least capacity to be able to exercise that in a way that would bear good fruit in their life. And they were mostly born into those situations. So it's not to say that they're victims. It's to say that people need help. They're taking advantage. They're being opportunistic
Yeah.
And they're demonstrating. I'm not talking about the demonstrators, but
Yeah.
like people who are peacefully protesting. I'm talking about people who are rioting, burning things down. These are people that are showing their moral capacity
Yeah.
to exercise their freedom, right?
Yeah, right.
So I'm not trying to make a condemnation or judgment. What I'm saying is that it's clear that these people who are acting this way need a support structure around them to help exercise their freedom in a more responsible way. And oftentimes we ignore those people, or we just simply reduce them or scapegoat on them or blame them.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas they feel like they're just 100% the victim and
Yeah.
therefore they're owed all this stuff. Well, neither of those positions is really true. I think we have to find more of a balanced view on this. And so it's like, on the one hand, you have to create the conditions of freedom and not be too controlled. But on the other hand, we also have to lend a hand to people
Right. We have to get into those neighborhoods, right?
in those communities and
Right.
help them. And that's
Mhm.
not that's not always easy. It's not such a black and white solution. It's
Yeah.
more of a gray, complex, and
Yeah.
messy solution, because we have to
Yeah.
get involved in people's lives, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Christians are pretty good at doing that. There's a number of situations. I'm trying to think. We were at this place, and you're not going to remember. I think we were in Colorado at the time. And we went to this place that was doing, I don't know if it was drug, and do you remember that place we went to? We visited this place, and they were just doing amazing work with, I think it was alcohol and drug abuse, people coming in and experiencing a lot of love and a lot of rehabilitation, and then going back out, and these were impoverished, people who weren't experiencing the best that society has to offer. So I'm bringing back a way back, a memory that goes
Yeah,
from way back.
I'm
That's
not
not
remembering
coming
that,
back to you.
but
wish
I
it
believe
would.
you.
Yeah.
We
So,
did go to a place like that. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a vague recollection of that.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess the point is that we have to take responsibility, and to think and to love those people who have not experienced opportunities,
And the
not-
kind of formation and education, or the
Yeah.
kind of love in our home life, or
right,
whatever. I mean, those are all things that really help
Right.
people exercise their freedom in responsible ways and to access the opportunities that are available.
right,
And so, we want to avoid the extremes.
right. And we have some good stuff going on, even in our little parish, our church. Here locally, there's a lot of outreach. And I think there are a lot of churches that are reaching out to these kinds of folks and trying to find them. And we need more of that.
Yeah. So freedom, as we come up on Independence Day, it'll be interesting to see how we celebrate this year as a nation.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of fireworks going off, but they're not going to be
Hopefully
in
not
the
in
sky.
people's houses. Right.
But it's a good
Keep it up.
it's a good time of year for us
Yeah.
as Americans to really reflect on what freedom really is.
Yeah.
And freedom is this capacity for doing the good
Right.
and to take responsibility for our lives. It's not really the right to do as we please, because when we reduce it to just that, then we discover very quickly that we can use our freedom in very destructive and harmful ways towards other people.
Yeah.
And so we need to celebrate the freedom that was hard fought and hard won in this country by, the founding fathers and every generation
Amen.
of Americans that have had to fight the same battle to not give up our freedom. But
Right.
but the flip side of that is that every gift of freedom we're given is also a responsibility to exercise our freedom and to choose what we do for the sake of the common good and not just our own individual personal preferences.
Right.
We have to always seek the good of others in our communities and our neighbors, our family, and our neighborhoods, etc. And then freedom will grow and not be diminished by tyrannical types of people that think they need to control everything for all of us.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. That's a happiness hunch.
A happiness hunch. It begins in the home.
Right. We got to do this in our homes too, and that can be a struggle. We tend to be authoritarian in our homes, and
We do? I don't. I don't know what you're talking about. She's just talking about herself.
yeah. So it starts with us. We have to practice these ideas in our very homes. We have to listen to our kids. They would be wise to listen to us. And so we need this fruitful environment where we can really thrive and help one another
Grow in freedom.
So
Oh, you just were going to say that.
I
Sorry.
was. You took the words right out of my mouth.
You stole your thunder.
Yeah. All right. So until next time, I guess.
All right. Do you like our new background? You should like this video below. Share it with your friends. Freedom. It's a great thing. All right.
All
Take
right,
care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.